The sun was slowly rising over New Delhi, painting the sky with soft shades of gold and pink. The city was already awake, filled with the sound of vendors calling out, children rushing to school, and people preparing for another long day of work. But somewhere away from the noise, in a quiet government guest house, two men sat together in silence. One was Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, a man who carried the weight of millions on his shoulders. The other was Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, who had flown in from America for a private meeting. They had met before, but this morning was different. This was not about technology, politics, or global conferences. This was about something deeper, something human. The air in the room was heavy with unspoken thoughts. Sundar's eyes, usually calm and focused, carried a strange heaviness, while Modi's face, known for its firm expression, softened as he listened. They were not discussing policy. Instead, Sundar spoke of a memory that had stayed with him since childhood. He spoke about his mother, Lakshmi, who once stood outside a small clinic for hours because she could not afford to pay for treatment. He remembered the tired look on her face, the way she quietly endured pain without asking for help. His father had comforted her, but Sundar never forgot that moment. It was the seed that had grown into his desire to change lives through technology and kindness. Modi listened with quiet respect. He too had stories of struggle. He remembered selling tea at a railway station, watching his mother cook simple meals from what little they had. He remembered how poverty shaped him, how it gave him strength but also a responsibility to never forget the poor. And as he heard Sundar's voice tremble with emotion, he realized they both carried scars of the same kind, different paths, but the same foundation of humility. For a long time, neither man spoke. There was no rush, no cameras, no crowd, just silence. Then Modi broke it with words that carried the weight of truth. Sundar, people often think kindness must come after success, but in truth, kindness is what makes success meaningful. Sundar looked at him and nodded slowly. Those words touched something deep inside him. He had built an empire of technology, but the memory of his mother waiting outside that clinic never left him. It was time to do something about it. That morning, they made a quiet decision. It was not a plan written on official papers, not a project with big announcements or ceremonies. It was a silent promise. They would find ways to give back with humility, not through grand speeches, but through acts so genuine that people would feel hope rise in their hearts again. They wanted to do something not for recognition, but because they understood suffering. And when two powerful men who carried the weight of struggle came together, it created a force stronger than power itself, a force of compassion. The first step came sooner than expected. As they left the guest house together, their cars were waiting. Security guards and officials stood ready, but a sound from across the street caught Sundar's ear. It was a child crying. He turned and saw a little boy holding his younger sister. Their clothes were torn, their faces covered in dust and their eyes filled with hunger. Sundar froze for a moment. Memories of his own childhood returned and his heart ached. Modi noticed too. He stepped forward, ignoring the worried whispers of his security team. The boy looked frightened, unsure of who these men were. But then Modi bent down, his voice soft. "What is your name, beta?" The boy whispered his name, Aaron. His sister clung to him tightly. Sundar's eyes grew moist. He opened his wallet and took out some money, but then he stopped. Money would feed them for a day, maybe two. But what about after that? He glanced at Modi, who was thinking the same. Giving money would be easy, but giving dignity would be harder. Modi reached out and placed his hand on Aaron's shoulder. "Come with us," he said. The boy hesitated, but the kindness in Modi's eyes melted his fear. Sundar bent down and gently carried the little girl in his arms. For the first time that morning, the silence around them broke, not with words, but with an act of kindness. When they entered the car with the children, the officials were stunned. This was not planned, not part of any protocol, but for Sundar and Modi, it was the most natural thing to do. As the car moved, Sundar whispered to Modi, "This is where we start." Modi nodded, his voice firm but gentle. "Yes, one life at a time." That ride changed everything. It was no longer about plans made in offices. It became a journey of hearts. They knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would be resistance, critics, and obstacles. But in that moment, They also knew they had found something rare, a purpose born not from power but from pain, and that purpose would shape the days to come in ways no one could predict. The story of Arun and his sister was only the beginning. What followed was a series of choices that would test their courage, challenge their patience, and reveal the true strength of humility. Sundar and Modi were about to show the world that greatness is not measured by titles, but by the ability to kneel down and lift others with kindness. And so, their journey began, with a rare moment of silence that turned into action, and a small promise that would grow into something extraordinary. The car drove slowly through the busy streets of Delhi, but inside, time felt different. Aaron held tightly to Modi's hand, his small fingers trembling with both fear and trust. His sister lay quietly in Sundar's arms, her face resting against his shirt. Neither man spoke for a while. They were lost in thought, each remembering their own struggles. Modi recalled the days when his mother worked late into the night to provide food for the family. Sundar thought about the small house in Chennai where every rupee was counted, where simple dreams were built with sacrifice. And now, here they were carrying two children who reminded them of their own past. When they arrived at a small shelter run by volunteers, the children were given food and water. Aaron watched carefully, making sure his sister ate first before he touched the food himself. Sundar noticed this and felt a sharp ache in his heart. Such a young boy, but already carrying the weight of responsibility. Modi watched too, his eyes softening. He leaned close to Sundar and whispered, "This is what poverty does. It teaches children to grow up before their time." Sundar nodded slowly. The memory of his own mother standing outside that clinic returned like a shadow. After the children were safe, Sundar and Modi sat in a quiet corner of the shelter. There was no media, no announcement. It was only them and a few volunteers. One of the volunteers, a woman with tired eyes but a warm smile, approached them. She thanked them for bringing the children, but then asked a question that cut deep. "Sir, many children come here every week. Who will care for all of them?" Her voice was not accusing but filled with quiet truth. Both men fell silent. They knew she was right. One act of kindness was not enough. There had to be more. Later that evening, Sundar walked through the streets with Modi by his side. They had left behind their cars and security for a short time. They wanted to feel the city without walls, to see life as it truly was. They passed by markets filled with noise, shops glowing with light, and then, just a few streets away, dark alleys where children slept on cold ground. Sundar stopped at one corner. A group of young boys sat together, sharing a single piece of bread. Their laughter was forced, their hunger too real. Sundar's throat tightened. "How do they keep smiling when they have so little?" he asked quietly. Modi looked at him and said, "Because hope is the last thing the poor lose. And when hope dies, everything ends." That night, back at the guest house, they stayed awake long into the hours. Sundar opened his laptop, showing Modi ideas that could bring education and food to children in small towns and villages. Modi listened carefully, his mind racing with the possibilities. "Technology can be the bridge," Sundar said, "but compassion must be the foundation." Modi replied softly, "Yes, and together we can make sure no child feels invisible." But even as they spoke, challenges appeared. The next morning, when news leaked that Sundar and Modi had been seen at a shelter, critics began to whisper. Some said it was a political move. Others claimed it was staged. Sundar felt uneasy. He had not come for attention, but already people were questioning their motives. Modi noticed the concern on Sundar's face. "Do not let noise shake your purpose," he said firmly. "Truth will reveal itself in time." The real test came when they returned to the shelter a few days later. Aaron and his sister were there, healthier and smiling, but this time more children gathered around. Word had spread that two men had brought hope. Small hands reached out, voices cried for help. Sundar looked at Modi, overwhelmed. "How do we help them all?" he asked. Modi placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "We do not need to save the world in one day. We start with one, and then another. Kindness grows like a flame. It spreads when you share it." In that moment, Sundar understood. It was not about doing everything. It was about doing something and doing it with sincerity. He knelt down, speaking gently to the children, asking their names, their dreams. Some wanted food, some wanted school, some just wanted someone to listen. And as Sundar spoke to them, Modi stood nearby, his eyes filled with quiet pride. He saw not the CEO of a giant company, but a man who had not forgotten where he came from. As the sun set that evening, the shelter was alive with new energy. Volunteers worked harder, children laughed louder, and a rare warmth filled the air. Sundar and Modi walked away quietly, their steps heavy but their hearts lighter. They both knew the journey had just begun. They had touched lives, but in truth, those lives had touched them even more. They did not yet know how far this path would take them, or how much resistance they would face. But one thing was certain. The promise they had made in silence was now alive, burning with purpose. And no matter how hard the road became, they were ready to walk it together. The days after their visit to the shelter felt like a quiet storm. Sundar and Modi had not announced anything publicly, but whispers had already begun. People in government offices talked about secret plans. Media reporters searched for clues, and critics sharpened their voices. Why now? Some asked. Is this real kindness or just a clever move for attention? The questions grew louder, like an echo in empty halls. Sundar, who had always believed in quiet work, felt uneasy. He never wanted his act of kindness to look like a performance. Modi noticed his silence and said, "When you walk a path of truth, you will always face shadows of doubt. Let them talk. Our actions will speak louder than their words." But even as he said this, a new challenge appeared. One evening, when they returned to the shelter, they found a small crowd gathered outside. Men were shouting at the volunteers, accusing them of favoring some children and ignoring others. The children huddled inside, frightened. Sundar felt his chest tighten. The noise was sharp, the anger real. He wanted to step forward, but Modi raised his hand, stopping him. "Watch first," he whispered. A man from the crowd shouted, "You bring food for these children, but what about our families? Are we less important?" His face was lined with years of hardship, his voice heavy with bitterness. Sundar could not look away. He understood the pain in those words. Poverty did not belong to one group. It lived in every corner. Slowly, Modi stepped forward. The crowd grew quiet, surprised to see him without security pushing them back. He looked at the man and said, "Brother, hunger does not ask whose stomach it enters. It does not choose. We are not here to divide help, we are here to multiply it." His voice was calm but firm. The man's anger softened, but the doubt remained. Sundar then stepped beside Modi and added, "You are right to question us. But today we do not have all the answers. What we have is a promise. To begin, to build, to reach more tomorrow than we reach today." The crowd listened. Some nodded, some still looked skeptical. But the shouting stopped. The children inside slowly stepped out, holding small bowls of food. Aaron stood among them, his eyes filled with trust. Sundar saw the boy and felt a wave of strength. He turned back to the crowd and said softly, "If you cannot trust our words now, then wait and see our actions. Let them prove what is true." That night, as they left the shelter, Sundar asked Modi, "How do we carry such a heavy promise? What if we fail?" Modi looked up at the stars and replied, "Failure is not when you fall. Failure is when you stop trying. Even if we can only help some, those few lives will carry the light forward." But destiny was about to test them harder. A week later, a local newspaper published an article filled with suspicion. It claimed the shelter visit was planned for publicity, that the children were brought in to act for sympathy. The words were harsh, written to create doubt in the minds of the people. Sundar read it in silence, his face pale. He felt the same ache he had felt as a child when he saw injustice but could not speak. "What if they believe this?" he whispered. Modi placed his hand on his shoulder. "Let truth be patient. Lies are fast, but they do not last." Still, the article spread. More reporters arrived at the shelter, cameras flashing, asking the children questions. The peace of that place was broken. The volunteers grew restless, worried that their work would be drowned in noise. Sundar and Modi realized they had to act quickly. Instead of calling a press conference, Modi suggested something different. "Let us go where no cameras reach. Let us walk into the villages that are forgotten. There our kindness will not be doubted because it will be witnessed by those who have nothing to lose and nothing to gain." Sundar agreed. So one morning, before sunrise, they left quietly in simple clothes. with only a small group of trusted volunteers. They traveled far, away from the city, to a dry village where cracked earth spoke louder than words. Children walked barefoot, carrying empty pots. Women searched for water, and men sat tired from days without work. When Sundar and Modi arrived, there was no welcome, no recognition. The villagers did not know who they were at first. They only saw two strangers standing among them. Sundar bent down and asked a little girl her name. She whispered shyly, "Mira." Her hands were rough from carrying pots, though she was only 10 years old. Sundar's heart broke again. Modi spoke to the elders, listening to their struggles with water and food. Then something unexpected happened. When the villagers realized who these two strangers really were, silence fell over the ground. People looked at each other in disbelief. Sundar Pichai and Narendra Modi, standing in their forgotten village without guards, without cameras. Many could not believe it was real. A man finally spoke, his voice shaking. "Why have you come here? Leaders never come where there is no light." Modi looked at him and answered, "Because light must begin where darkness is deepest." In that moment, the villagers felt something shift. It was not about politics, not about promises. It was about presence. Sundar and Modi had chosen to stand with them, not above them. But as they began their work there, helping dig for water, arranging food, and speaking with families, a quiet storm was still rising outside. More critics, more voices of doubt, more obstacles waiting to strike. They did not know it yet, but the journey ahead would demand more than kindness. It would demand sacrifice. The village of Mira soon became a symbol of something rare. Sundar and Modi had not only visited but had stayed for days, listening, working, and sharing meals with the people. Children laughed again, women felt seen, and men spoke of hope after years of silence. But news of their presence spread quietly, and with it came unease. Not everyone wanted this change. In the city, some officials grew nervous. Powerful voices in business circles whispered that Sundar should not be spending his time in villages. "He is a CEO, not a social worker," one man said during a closed meeting. Another added, "If he continues like this, it will disrupt everything. Charity is fine, but too much humility from powerful men makes others look weak." These words carried weight, and soon barriers began to appear. When Sundar tried to send supplies to the village, unexpected delays blocked the trucks. Documents went missing, permissions were denied. Volunteers complained of being questioned and stopped. Modi, used to resistance, noticed the pattern at once. He told Sundar, "Do not mistake kindness for weakness. Those who fear change will always resist it." Sundar listened, but the weight grew heavy on his heart. One evening, as they sat outside under the open sky of the village, Sundar asked softly, "Why does helping people create enemies?" Modi looked at the stars for a long time before answering. "Because true kindness exposes false power. When you lift the weak, those who stand on their suffering begin to tremble." The next morning, their challenge became clear. A group of men arrived in the village, claiming to represent local authorities. They told the villagers that the help was temporary, that once the leaders left, nothing would remain. Fear spread quickly. People who had just begun to trust started doubting again. Sundar felt his chest tighten. He saw the same look on Mira's face that he once saw on his mother's, fear that hope would be snatched away. Modi stepped forward and addressed the villagers directly. His voice carried strength. "Do not believe those who feed you fear. Hope is not a gift from leaders. It is a right you already carry in your hearts. We are not here to give you promises. We are here to build with you, so that even when we leave, you can stand on your own." His words settled over the crowd like steady rain. Still, Sundar felt restless. Later, he walked alone near the dried well where Mira often sat with her pot. She came to him and asked, "Will you really come back? Or will you forget us like others?" Sundar knelt down, his eyes wet. "I cannot forget you, Mira, because you remind me of my own mother, my own childhood. I promise, as long as I live, I will not let your voice be lost." She looked at him quietly, then placed her small hand in his. That simple gesture gave Sundar strength. But the challenges were far from over. That night, as they prepared to leave for a nearby town to meet more families, a message arrived. Powerful businessmen had spoken openly against Sundar's actions, accusing him of mixing charity with influence. "This will not end well," the message warned. Modi read it calmly and said, "Let them speak. The higher the wall, the stronger we must climb." Yet Sundar could not ignore the storm rising. He had spent his life building through technology, numbers, and strategy. Now he was walking in a world where the battle was not with machines, but with hearts and fears. He turned to Modi and confessed, "I am afraid I am not strong enough for this fight." Modi looked at him firmly and said, "Strength is not in power, Sundar. Strength is in standing when you want to sit, in walking when the path is heavy, and in speaking when silence is easier. You are already stronger than you know." The next day, instead of slowing down, they moved faster. They traveled to another village, then another. They carried no banners, no announcements, just presence, words, and acts of care. The resistance grew louder in the cities, but in the villages something else was spreading. Hope. In one village, a teacher told Sundar, "Your coming here has made children dream again." They now believe that someone is listening. Sundar's eyes filled with tears. He realized something powerful. Every child who dreamed was a seed planted against the noise of doubt. Still, the road ahead was dark. Whispers of stronger opposition reached their ears. Some said politicians felt threatened. Some said businessmen wanted to silence the work. Sundar and Modi knew storms were gathering, but as they stood together, watching children laugh under a sky full of stars, they also knew one truth. Storms test you, but they also cleanse the sky. And in that rare moment, they made a vow to each other. No matter what came, they would not stop. For every child like Aaron, for every girl like Meera, for every mother who waited outside a clinic in silence, they would walk forward. The resistance was real, but so was their purpose. The days that followed were heavy with both light and shadow. In the villages, laughter returned, but in the cities, opposition grew stronger. Meetings were held behind closed doors, and those with power and influence began to see Sundar and Modi's work as a threat. "If the poor rise with dignity, who will remain silent under us?" one voice said with bitterness. Soon the pressure turned into action. One morning, as Sundar prepared to visit another small town with Modi, they received news that shook them. The shelter where Aaron and his sister had found safety had been closed by local authorities. The reason given was misuse of funds, but Sundar knew it was a lie. He felt his chest tighten as memories of Aaron's frightened eyes came rushing back. Without waiting, they rushed to the city. When they arrived, the shelter was empty. The children had been moved, volunteers were scattered, and the rooms where laughter once echoed now stood silent. Sundar walked through the empty hall, his hands trembling. "This is my fault," he whispered. "Because of me they are suffering." Modi placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "No, Sundar. This is not failure. This is resistance trying to break your spirit. But spirit is not so easy to break." Sundar's eyes filled with tears. "But where are the children now? Where is Arun?" The silence in the room was unbearable. Just then, one of the volunteers rushed in, breathless. "They took the children to a temporary camp. 'Tis far from the city and the conditions are bad." Sundar's heart sank deeper. Without hesitation, he and Modi left at once. The camp was nothing like the shelter. It was crowded, noisy, and cold. Children sat on the ground, confused and scared. When Sundar spotted Aaron holding his sister tightly, his heart broke. The boy's eyes lit up for a moment when he saw Sundar, but quickly turned to fear again. "They said you would not come back," Aaron whispered. Sundar knelt down, his voice shaking. "I promised you, Aaron. I will never leave you." He hugged the boy, and in that moment he felt a surge of strength he had never known. But they both knew this was a bigger battle now. Helping a few was not enough. Structures of power were standing in their way. As they left the camp, Sundar asked, "How do we fight against a system so strong?" Modi replied, his voice calm, "We do not fight with anger. We fight with persistence, and with people who still believe in truth." And it was at this moment that fate brought them an ally. As they sat together that night, planning their next step, a soft knock came at the door. It was the volunteer woman from the shelter, the one who had asked them the painful question weeks ago. Who will care for all of them? Her name was Anjali. She had left her job years ago to dedicate her life to children in need. Her eyes were tired, but her spirit was unbroken. "I know what they are trying to do. she said firmly. They want to scatter us to make us give up. But I have worked in villages you have not yet seen. I know families who will stand with you. I know teachers, doctors, and farmers who will help. If you want to continue, I will guide you. Sundar looked at her in disbelief. In that moment, she seemed like a bridge between their purpose and the people. Modi nodded slowly, his eyes filled with quiet respect. Anjali ji, your strength is greater than ours because you have carried this fight alone for years. Now let us carry it with you. Anjali agreed, but she also warned them. The path will not be easy. They will try harder to stop you. They will make lies louder. They will test your patience. Sundar looked at her with steady eyes. They can take away buildings, but they cannot take away hope. If you walk with us, we will not stop. And so, with Anjali by their side, their journey took a new turn. No longer was it only two men walking alone. Now, it was three hearts, bound by struggle and purpose, ready to face storms. But storms were already forming. In the distance, more voices of opposition grew louder, stronger, and more dangerous. Sundar and Modi were about to face their hardest test yet, the test that would decide whether their kindness would survive or be crushed under the weight of power. The days with Anjali brought new strength. She led Sundar and Modi to places hidden from the city's gaze, villages where children studied under broken roofs, where mothers walked miles for a single bucket of water, where men worked hard but earned almost nothing. Sundar listened to every story, and Modi carried every voice in his heart. Together they gave not just food or money, but presence. They sat on the ground with the poor, ate simple meals, and reminded people they were not forgotten. Hope began to spread. Whispers of kindness moved faster than the whispers of doubt. But as light grew, so did the shadows. One morning, when they prepared to leave for another village, Anjali rushed in with worry on her face. "There is trouble," she said. "Someone has spread false news that your visits are only for a secret political plan. Villagers are being told not to trust you." Sundar's stomach tightened. "Who would do this?" Anjali looked down, her voice heavy. "Someone from inside the group has been speaking against us. Betrayal." The word stung sharper than any enemy's voice. Sundar felt his trust shake. He thought of Arun, Meera, and all the children who believed in them. What if this betrayal destroyed their hope? Modi placed a hand on Sundar's shoulder and said quietly, "It is easy to fight against those outside. But the deepest wound comes when the knife is carried inside the cloth of friendship." Later that day, their worst fear became real. In one of the villages, when they arrived, the people turned away. Some shouted at them, others closed their doors. A man yelled, "We heard you will leave us soon, that you are only using us." Sundar's heart cracked. He tried to explain, his voice trembling. "We are here because we care, not because we want anything in return." But the words were drowned in noise. That night, Sundar sat in silence, his eyes fixed on the floor. "Maybe we cannot win this," he whispered. "Maybe kindness cannot survive against lies." His voice was weak, almost breaking. Modi watched him carefully. He knew this was the moment that could either break Sundar or make him stronger. "Do not forget, Sundar," Modi said softly. "When a seed is placed in the soil, it looks like it has been buried in darkness. But in truth, it is preparing to grow. Our kindness is that seed. The darkness is only a test." Anjali too spoke gently. "You may feel alone, but you are not. The children still believe. Arun still waits for you. Meera still trusts your word. If you stop now, their hope dies." Sundar closed his eyes, and in that silence he saw Arun's small hand clutching his, Meera's question, "Will you forget us?" and his mother's face waiting outside that clinic. He opened his eyes again, filled with tears but also fire. "No," he whispered. "I cannot stop. Even if the world turns against us, I cannot stop." The very next day, the battle grew harder. Powerful men sent orders to cut off supplies reaching the villages. Volunteers were threatened. Even Anjali received warnings to step back. But instead of retreating, they decided to face the storm directly. They called for a gathering, not in the city, not in front of cameras, but in the open fields between villages. Word spread quietly. When the day came, hundreds gathered. Farmers, mothers, children, teachers, ordinary people who had nothing but their voices. Sundar stood among them, not on a stage but on the ground. His voice shook at first, but then grew steady. I do not ask you to trust me with words. Trust me with what I do. I was once a boy like Aaron, watching my mother suffer in silence. I was once a child like Mira, waiting for hope. I am not here as the head of a company. I am here as someone who knows your pain, because it is my own pain too. The crowd grew quiet. Tears filled some eyes. Modi then stepped forward, his voice carrying strength. They will tell you lies, but look at the actions before you. We did not come with banners or promises. We came with our hands and hearts. Together we can build something that cannot be broken. For the first time in many days, the people did not shout. They listened. Then a small voice broke the silence. It was Mira. She stepped forward, holding her pot, her voice clear. I believe them, she said simply. The crowd turned to her, and in her innocent truth, hearts began to soften again. The storm of betrayal had not passed. Enemies still plotted, lies still spread. But that night, as Sundar watched the villagers stand by them again, he realized something. Kindness is fragile, but it is also unbreakable when it is carried by many hands. Still, the final test was waiting, one that would push them to the very edge and show whether their promise of humility and kindness could truly survive. The air was heavy with tension. Even after Mira's brave voice had restored hope, the storm outside grew darker. Lies continued to spread. Powerful men worked quietly to block their every step, and whispers of failure reached their ears again and again. Sundar and Modi knew the final test was coming, but they did not know how or when. The answer came one morning in the form of a message. A large gathering was being planned in the city by those who opposed them. Speeches would be made to paint them as liars, to break the trust they had built in villages. If they succeed, Anjali warned, everything you have done will be crushed. Sundar felt the old fear return, but this time he did not stay silent. Then we must face them, he said firmly. Modi looked at him with quiet pride. Yes, but not with anger. We will face them with humility. The day of the gathering arrived. A massive hall was filled with leaders, businessmen, and reporters waiting to hear words against them. Cameras stood ready. Sundar, Modi, and Anjali entered quietly, without banners or speeches prepared. Whispers spread through the hall as they walked to the stage. A man who opposed them spoke first. His voice was sharp, his words filled with accusation. These two men play with emotions. They visit villages to build their image, but when the cameras leave, so will they. Do not be fooled by their acts of charity. Applause followed from those who wished to believe him. Sundar listened, his hands trembling slightly but his heart steady. When it was his turn, Sundar walked slowly to the front. The hall was silent, waiting. He looked at the crowd and spoke softly, but his voice carried strength. I have no interest in image. I do not need your applause. I do not stand here as the head of a company. I stand here as a son who once saw his mother wait outside a clinic in pain, as a boy who knew hunger could take away dignity. I am here because no child should carry that pain again. The hall stirred. Some faces softened, some remained cold. Then Modi stepped forward. His voice was calm but powerful. We do not claim to save everyone. We are not heroes. We are simply men who refuse to forget where we came from. If that is seen as weakness, then let it be weakness. But remember this, true strength is not in how high you stand, but in how low you can bend to lift others. The silence that followed was deep. Then something unexpected happened. Arun and Mira, brought by Anjali, walked to the stage. They stood beside Sundar and Modi, their small voices cutting through the hall. Arun said, they did not forget us. They fed us, they listened to us, they stayed with us when no one else came. Mira added softly, they gave us hope. The hall was shaken. No words of power could fight against the truth spoken by children. For a moment, even critics lowered their eyes. The gathering ended not with loud applause, but with quiet reflection. Some still doubted, some still resisted, but many more began to see the truth. And that was enough. After that day, things slowly changed. More volunteers joined, more shelters opened, more villages found light. Sundar used technology to bring education and healthcare to remote places, while Modi ensured policies supported the work. Anjali became the bridge, guiding them to the most forgotten corners. But through it all, Sundar and Modi never let pride touch their hearts. Whenever people praised them, they simply said, we are not the story. The story belongs to the children who dream, to the mothers who sacrificed, to the people who refused to give up. Years later, the story of their journey spread far beyond India. It became not a tale of power but a tale of humility. People around the world spoke of a rare moment when two leaders chose kindness over recognition, when they walked into darkness and lit small lamps that grew into a fire of hope. And somewhere in a quiet village, Aaron studied under a bright light, dreaming of becoming a teacher. Mira carried water not with fear but with pride, because a new well now stood in her village. Their laughter was the real legacy. Sundar and Modi often said to each other, "We did not change the whole world, but we changed someone's world, and that is enough." And so the story ended not with power but with humility, not with victory but with kindness. A rare moment that became a timeless lesson, that greatness is not in how much you take, but in how much you give back with respect and love.